I'd like to invite a very special guest, a 13-time Grand Slam champion, Jordanne Whiley MBE.
Mental health wise, I probably struggled with it my whole life. When you grow up disabled in the 90s and the early noughties, I was bullied quite a bit in school. I didn't have many friends. I never even looked past the year that I was in. Tennis was life.
They say that you should stop and celebrate your win. You're already looking at the next mountain peak to climb. How do you manage your nerves?
You don't really. I really struggled with my nerves and self-belief.
How dark did it get?
I wanted to quit. It was literally gone from I can't play tennis to I've just won the US Open on my own.
You are a fighter, girl. I'm literally on the edge of my seat.
Yeah.
Next, I'd like to invite a very special guest, Jordanne Whiley MBE, world #1 junior. You made your debut in Beijing at the age of 16 in 2008, and then subsequently won the women's doubles bronze in London 2012 and Rio 2016. You got a bronze at the Olympics. A 13-time Grand Slam champion, a mother, and now a superstar property investor and mortgage broker. Wow. Welcome, Jordanne. What an amazing career, and you're just getting started on your second career.
Yeah, basically. It's a long list of stuff, but it kind of feels like I've done one whole lifetime and now I'm going into another.
And so you've been awarded with an MBE. I hear that you also have a doctorate. So what should I call you, Jordanne?
just Jordanne is fine. Is
that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like when I got my MBE in 2015, and it was I had a really successful year in 2015. It was one of my best years. Going into 2016, going into the Rio.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was just thrown with honours and letters after my name. So I just ended up with a compilation of letters after my name. So I just use MBE because it's so much easier.
Well, do you have a wall like this with your love? Is it a certificate that you get, or what do you get?
Yeah, it's kind of like a framed scroll, which is actually really, really pretty. But no, I don't even know what that is.
You need to make a wall like this where you can put it.
I did have everything on my wall. I had a trophy cabinet. I had everything. But then I found every person who was coming into my house, whether it be a plumber or whatever it was, they were like, "Oh, what do you do?" And then I got tired of it, so I boxed them all up.
I might have to record my answer and actually just play it to you.
Yeah, let me just play and then.
So, I mean, an amazing kind of stellar career, and just to kind of take us back to young Jordanne. How did you get into tennis, and when did you kind of realize that this is getting into something that is quite serious?
So I was 3 when I started playing tennis. That was 1995. It was kind of almost an accident. My dad played tennis because he was Paralympian as well.
Yeah.
And he was traveling to Israel for a tournament, and me and my mum came out with him because obviously I was only 3. And I'd actually broken my leg, so I couldn't go in the swimming pool. I couldn't do anything. And one of my dad's friends gave me a racket just to kind of keep me occupied. And that's basically where my love of tennis began, in Israel. Mm-hmm. Weirdly enough, when I was 18, I went back to that same tournament in the same place and won it.
Wow.
Yeah, and I took a picture of me when I was 3 in the same spot and me when I was 18 with the trophy.
That's amazing. And so your dad was a very kind of recognized tennis player of his time.
Yeah, he did a bit of everything back then because it wasn't as serious as it is now. So he kind of did basketball, he did tennis, rifle, track.
Oh wow.
He did everything, yeah.
And whilst you were kind of growing up, were you kind of looking at your dad going, I want to do that? Was it kind of did it kind of lay this kind of path in front of you going, that's what I want to do?
I think it took a while for me to get there. I always knew that I wanted to go into sport. I loved sport. I was good at tennis. I tried various sports as a kid, but I always came back to tennis. But I was also quite academic, and I really enjoyed learning and being at school. So I was really, really torn whether if I wanted to go to university and go down that route, or if I wanted to go professional full-time tennis. I made that decision when I left school at 16.
Because I can imagine that, whenever you watch anything to do with sports at that level, you know, whether you watch a documentary or even a movie that's around someone who's, you know, at that level of sports, it is something that is, it's like, it's what you do 24/7, and you kind of live and breathe it. Being kind of a child who was, like you said, you like learning as well. What did your kind of week and day look like? Was it kind of like after school, like every single kind of moment you were pretty much playing tennis?
Almost, yeah. So obviously I started really young. So in my younger years, I was just playing tennis with my dad in the garden or just whenever. And then when I was about 10, he started taking me to these, they're kind of like camps, and they were up in Nottingham, and it was just a bunch of kids that got together and played tennis. And it was there that I was talent spotted when I was about 11. And that's how my sort of journey into the junior, senior came about. But at that time, I was probably only doing Monday nights after school, just a couple of hours with my dad. And I slowly increased it as I got better and better. The year for the qualification for Beijing was also the year of my GCSEs. So it was really, really stressful because I didn't want to fail any of my GCSEs, but I also was trying really hard to get to Beijing. And at that time, I was very much out of the qualification because I was quite young, quite inexperienced. My ranking wasn't quite there. So it was kind of, you know, in Ice Age with the squirrel trying to get the nut. Yeah. That's how I kind of referred to it. It's like I was so close, but I was like not there yet. And I actually qualified via wildcard. So how it works is you get direct entry. The top 24 in the world get direct entry, and then there's 8 wild cards that are given to people who the board feel deserve it. So I put in for a wild card, and I was given that. I was actually told I got the wild card on my 16th birthday after I'd actually done all of my GCSEs and passed.
Oh my gosh!
So
well done to you to manage that. That, you know, I mean, that just to do your GCSEs alone is super stressful. I mean, I remember like doing my GCSEs, and it's like the whole thing of it being 9 subjects, you know, when you kind of get into A levels and your degree, it's much more like this is more focused. But doing 9 subjects and wanting to do well at it, and then going, oh, I've got this little thing of the, you know, the Olympics that I really want to get into. How did you manage that stress level?
Not very well. I mean, I was obviously very, very young. And also I had my parents who at that time really pushed me into education. So I did actually go to college for 3 months. And then that was when I came back from Beijing. So I'd done Beijing, went straight to college for 3 months, and then realized college life is not for me. I just had an amazing experience in Beijing. This is what I want to do with my life. I've seen people medal. I didn't medal in Beijing, but I'd seen my teammates medal. So I was like, this is where I want to be. So I went home and told my mum I'm going to quit college and go full-time into tennis, because I felt like I could always go back to education if it didn't work out, but I'd never be able to go back and take that opportunity in sport. And luckily they were on board, and it was probably one of the best decisions I ever made. So.
That's quite a big decision to make at that point. But I can imagine that, were you kind of feeling like that real kind of deep down feeling that I need to be single-minded on this, because, you know, to make it at that level, it is a real kind of single-minded sport. There's not much else, even in terms of your social life, you know, when you're kind of turning 16, 17 and you're starting to kind of go out, your friend circle. How did the kind of pressure of going, okay, this is a sport that I want to kind of go into, which is at global level, kind of affect you just as a teenager, kind of going through being 16, you know, having friends? Were you single-minded about it then enough, or were you kind of feeling a bit kind of torn of going, hey, but I'm not able to go out with my friends as much and do all that stuff?
It was really difficult because, so in school, I wasn't very popular. I think because growing up with a disability, especially like mine, where it's not visible all the time. And, you know, early noughties, it wasn't really a thing. I was like the only person with a disability in my school, and I was seen to have special treatment. And I was bullied quite a bit in school. I didn't have many friends. So when I was competing and I was at school, it wasn't too bad, because actually when I was abroad competing, I was loving my life because I didn't really have anything to go back to. Whereas when I went to college, that all changed, and I became quite popular, and I had like a really great group of friends. So the decision to leave that was quite difficult. But at the same time, I was like, well, you know, I'm going to be with these people for 2 years and we're all going to go off to uni, or we're going to go off to do whatever we want. I'm never going to see you again. And then I'm going to regret not doing what I want to do. And I just felt like, you know, I have this talent, I have this gift, I enjoy it, I'm good at it. I'm 16 years old, so what's the worst that could happen? And I mean, I'm quite strong-minded anyway.
Yeah,
like,
and I think probably because you've had that, you know, watching your dad kind of grow in the sport, playing sport from a young age. They say sport builds character, right? So by the time you're 16 and you've been doing that for quite a few years, it's almost like you have created a mental like way of dealing with things that perhaps like your average 15 or 16-year-old who hasn't gone through that growth would go, hang on a second, that's a really difficult decision to make. But it seems like you're quite level-headed and able to look at things quite practically.
Yeah, I feel like I did. I mean, I was traveling the world from about the age of 14, and I started traveling alone at 16, obviously, when I could. So I was quite independent, and I knew what I wanted. So it wasn't a difficult decision in terms of that, but I did miss out on a lot of stuff because, you know, I didn't go to uni, or I didn't build that friendship that people build in uni or at college. So obviously I did a bit of clubbing in my time, but nowhere near what, you know, the average person had done. And yeah, now it's like, well, I don't have a large group of friends because I never had that same childhood as everyone else. So it's like that whole making friends in adulthood, yay.
Were you always thinking like 5 years ahead, or were you just like, just get through this year, play good this year? How is it to be a kind of athlete when you're that age and winning at a top level? Do you start kind of thinking 10 years, you know, when you start turning 20, do you think 10 years down the line, or are you more like in the moment, in the kind of like, let's get this year done and we'll think about next year when we get there?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, I never even looked past the year that I was in. I never thought about the future, like long-term future. And for me, tennis was life, and I was going to do tennis until I either stopped enjoying it or couldn't do it anymore, didn't want to do it anymore. So for me, that was probably going to be in my 30s, maybe in my 40s. Yeah, and I always wanted to just be top of my game. I was always wanted to be world number one. I did get there in doubles. I got to number 3 in singles by the time I'd retired. So, I mean, I wasn't that far off. And I always wanted to get a singles medal, which I did in Tokyo, but that was like my last shot to get a medal. So there was like always things that I wanted to do. I'd do 1 Grand Slam, and then I wanted 4 Grand Slams, and then I wanted 10 Grand Slams. It was always more.
There was always more.
And I think when you're a sports person, it's really easy to forget what you've done and just sit back and be like, actually, I've done good here, because nothing was good enough, because when I hit my next target, I'm always on to the next target.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of similarity in business as well. You know, they say that you should stop and celebrate your wins, and I know that definitely, like for us, there are quite a lot of periods as we were growing in those first few years that you look back and go, we done some amazing things, but we were already on to the next thing. It's kind of like you're kind of on this, I sometimes kind of call it like a train analogy, where you're on this train and it's going, and you don't sometimes stop to kind of go, hey, we achieved this, we done this. And it is so important to do that. But I do think that perhaps in sports and in business, it's so easy to get the mindset and what's next? What's the next? It's like you're already looking at the next mountain peak to climb before you're kind of standing on the where you are and going, hey, this is cool. Look what I've achieved. Yeah. And it is quite fast paced as well, isn't it? That everything's going at that. You're doing everything to get to that one point, that one day, and then that day's gone. And then it's the next thing. So you just literally throw yourself
and
into
it is
the
very
next
much
part.
in the moment as well. Like with sport, if I don't perform on that day or even in that hour, I'm out of the competition. So, you know, in other aspects of life or in other jobs, it's like you can have a bad day, you can have a bad performance, but you haven't ruined your whole business. Whereas for me, it was like I go to a Grand Slam, and if I don't have a good day, I lose, I'm out.
That pressure, I mean, it's an insane amount of pressure, but how do you mentally get yourself in the, you know, like let's say you're up, it's the Olympics, and you know that everything's riding, and as you're stepping out onto that court, right, you're about to play your game. This is like a pinnacle in your career. How do you manage your nerves?
You don't really, because everyone used to say that to me, and I think people who aren't in sport assume that the greatest in sport don't get nervous.
Yeah,
but they do. They get really nervous, but they just have ways of controlling it, which for me was really difficult because I really struggled with my nerves, and like self-belief was a real big thing for me. I worked really closely with a sports psych, several sports psychs actually throughout my career. And one of the things that I will never ever forget is in 2015 was when I won the US Open. It was my only singles Grand Slam. The other 12 were in doubles.
Yeah.
The week before that, I was in America. I was playing a tournament. It was one of the worst tournaments of my life.
Oh gosh.
And I say that like literally, it was horrendous. And I even had meetings with my coaches out there, and they were like, "What is going on?" Like they got to the point where even they didn't know what to do. They were on the phone home with my coaches back home saying something's happened. The Grand Slam is next week.
And had something happened? Was there something that you couldn't explain?
Nothing.
What it was?
I couldn't explain it. I was just awful, and I just don't know why. And to this day, I don't know why. And I was worried because the Grand Slam was next week, and in my head I was like, well, I'm out. First round, I probably won't even get past the first round. And I remember getting to the Grand Slam. The first couple of training sessions I had were awful, just almost like I was an amateur tennis player, so bad. My coach was then again on the phone back to my ex-partner, who was actually my coach at the time, back home, saying that she's going to be home soon. Like it's kind of done. We need to figure out a plan. Everyone's panicking because this is 2015 when I'm the peak of my career. Rio's next year. And the draw came out. It was a great draw. I got a person who I'd never ever lost to. Played awful, scraped through that round.
Yeah.
Got to the semi-finals and was playing the world number 2 or 3 at the time. I can't remember. And awful.
Oh gosh.
I don't know if you understand the rules of tennis, but I was 1 set and 4-2 down.
Yeah.
And my coach is literally on the side like this.
Gosh. Wait, did you look at him?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
And even I was just like, I don't know what to do. And he was just head in the hands. Like it was just awful. So I bowed out basically. And
I mean that moment when you looked at him and his head's in his hands, I mean you already feel like
because you know, because
right?
your team, even your team has lost faith in you. So I'd lost faith at this time. But that was actually the key. He lost faith, I lost faith. So then I was like, well,
whatever.
Yeah, done. I'm done. And I was 2 match points down. I thought, well, done. I'll just smack it as hard as I can. Did that, won the game. Next thing I know, I've won the match. I've come back. I've won that set. And then I've won the next set. And then I'm in the final of my first ever Grand Slam.
Oh my God.
Against my best friend and doubles partner. Next thing I know, I've won that. And it was literally like gone from I can't play tennis to I've just won the US Open on my own. And it was, if it wasn't for me looking over to my coach with him and head in the hands, like I've lost faith.
Do you think that was the trigger? Because
I was so nervous and I was so caught up. I was so overthinking everything. And then as soon as I was like, well, F it, whatever. I'd completely relaxed. And then suddenly I could play tennis again. And the next thing I know, I was Grand Slam champion.
That is an amazing story, but such a key learn from that. Because you're probably then playing as opposed to having to meet the expectation that you've put there.
Yeah, because I put that expectation on myself. It was almost like I was crushing my own dream of winning a Grand Slam. And not only did that then, what was in the moment, obviously won the Grand Slam, changed that moment, but it also went on to change the year, because after that I had one of the most successful years and I became one of the favourites for Rio to win gold. And it was just an incredible, after that I played amazing. I was in really good shape.
I get chills when you're saying
this.
Yeah,
it was just one of the best times in my career. Unfortunately, in Rio, I broke my wrist mid Rio in the quarterfinals. And I honestly believe if I hadn't have broken my wrist, I would have won gold. But it's like one of those things, isn't it? It's like, well, I can't help that.
And how did you accept that?
I didn't. I feel like it took me a good year to grieve the loss of a potential gold medal.
Thank you for being so honest, because I just when you said that, I was like, how do you?
It was awful. And like one of my teammates, he won silver, and all the hype was around him. And obviously I was so happy for him. And obviously now I'm like, amazing. He's an incredible tennis player. And I was so jealous at the time, and I just hated everything. And I was like, that should have been me. I was getting trolled on Twitter by people saying, lack of passion, you're playing for your country, and your worst performance ever. And I was like, yeah, but I broke my wrist. I would have been 25-ish. Yeah.
So really kind of at a peak, kind of also, when you, as a sports person, there's a lifespan that you're working. So that bit of all the bit that you've been working up to, that pinnacle, everyone's calling you like out to be, the number one, get the gold. And then having to have the backlash of, the media attention and Twitter and all of that.
And I refused to believe that I was injured. So I kept playing. I finished the match. Obviously I lost. I was in like streams of tears, and everyone thought she's crying because she lost. I was upset, but I was like, I'm crying, there's so much pain.
Oh my God.
So I had to then explain on Twitter, no, I wasn't just being an idiot on the court. I literally broke my wrist. But then I had the doubles bronze medal match the next day. And so I've got my doubles partner coming up to me like, what? We can win this bronze medal, and you've broken your wrist. What's going on? So I went to they had an in-house doctor in Rio. So I went there and I said, look, I need to play this match. I don't care what you do. Like, it's broken. It's not going to get any worse. Like, don't care what you do. So he injected me with anesthetic. And he said to me, you've got 2 hours to play this match, and it's going to wear off, and it's going to be hella. So I had the pressure of not only trying to win a bronze medal, but trying to do it within the 2 hours. And it was awful because we won the first set, and then we lost the second set. So it went to a third set, which then took it over the 2 hours.
Like, this needs to happen now,
literally,
guys.
I'm like, this is not what I need. So the pain starts coming back. It starts wearing off. And the only thing I could think of in the moment was, if I make somewhere else hurt, this won't hurt as much. So there's like footage of me just punching my other shoulder. And like, my dad is in the crowd, and he knows what I'm doing. He's like the only person who knows what I'm doing. Everyone is like, this chick has gone insane. She's punching herself. And I was saying to my doubles partner, like, this is what I'm doing. I'm not going insane. She was like, I don't care what you do. We just need to bag this bronze medal. So by the end of the match, we got the bronze medal. Don't know how.
Bloody hell. I don't have a drink, but I need to like cheers you to that.
It's ruined. I'm like, a bruised shoulder.
This is a movie. Like, I'm literally on the edge of my seat.
Yeah. After that, I was out for about three months or so. But I got the bronze, so I didn't mind.
Freaking hell, yes.
I was not going to quit.
Oh my God.
I've worked so hard to get to this moment. I'm not coming home without a medal.
Well, I mean, bloody hell, Jordanne, that is one hell of a story. But I mean, you came back with a bronze, and you still continued. But that mindset to get you through, you are a fighter, girl.
Yeah. And I was really annoyed at the bronze, because I was like, it could have been gold. So I was like, really, I had so much resentment towards this medal. But then actually now I'm like, it's one of my proudest medals, even though it's not my best, because of the story that goes behind it and how I got to get it.
And the kind of the year that you said, like, it took you a year to get over it.
Oh yeah. Good.
How was that year? How dark did it get?
I wanted to quit. I came home from Rio, and I said to my partner at the time and my coach.
Because had you got together with your partner? Were you getting married or?
Not at the time. We weren't engaged, but we'd been together since 2012. He was my coach, traveled everywhere with me. And I said to him, look, I want to quit. Like, this has destroyed my life. Like, I can't handle it. And he was like, don't quit. Like, you've got so much more in you. And I was just like, no, I want it to be done. And then I was like, maybe I should take a bit of a break. I was on a 3-month anyway with a cast on my hand. And that's when we decided maybe I should take some time out, and we were going to try for a baby. Yeah. And that's how I ended up with my son.
And so obviously something beautiful came out of it. You're now a mother. Were you thinking that what I want to do is go back? or what was your kind of thoughts? Because obviously, like, being a mother, or especially the early stages, is all consuming, right? You're there, you're fully on board with the fact that you're now a mother. You got this little one. Were you kind of like, okay, I still now need to work on this career? What were you feeling in your soul at that moment of where you were going to go with this?
I mean, I wasn't in a good place because of Rio, but I still competed once my wrist was better.
Yeah.
So we were trying for a baby and I was still competing, and I was like, well, I might as well keep in the game because I don't know what's going to happen. And then I found out I was pregnant with Jackson, and it was Wimbledon. So I couldn't really give up Wimbledon. I was 11 weeks pregnant. And I had to tell my doubles partner at the time because she was the only person I could tell.
Did you get bad morning sickness?
Really bad.
Oh my gosh.
Really bad. And the worst thing is that she was more worried about me. She was like, you're pregnant and you're playing Wimbledon. And every time I bent over, she was like, no, don't bend over. And I was like, it's okay. It's okay. And then the final they put on at 11 a.m. and I was struggling. I was on medication for morning sickness. So it was awful.
Were you that? Because, I as you know, I've got 3. And I didn't ever have morning sickness like it. But when I had it with my 3rd, and then knowing that you're now competing.
Yeah, it was awful.
Whoa.
It was awful. But then at that time, I didn't know if I wanted to come back because I was not in a good place. I just knew I needed a break. It wasn't until halfway through sort of mat leave. So I call it mat leave. It wasn't mat leave. I had about 18 months out in total.
Yeah.
Because obviously I had to, after Wimbledon, I was like 12 weeks and then I couldn't compete after that because it was kind of dangerous. Not like a normal job, and I can go on mat leave at like 34 weeks or whatever it is. So I had about 18 months out, and it was about halfway through and I was like, I kind of miss it. And then at Wimbledon the following year, I was at home with Jackson watching it on the TV, and I was like, I could do that. I was like, yeah, I could be her. That's literally what I was thinking. And then I was like, no, I've got to come back. So literally about a month after that, I've called up my team and was like, I'm coming back. I came back.
You came back. And did you go straight back into it, start doing competitions? And
so I was my first competition was probably about two or 3 months after I decided to come back. And it was really successful because I beat the world number 3 in my first tournament back. I have no idea how. I don't know if it was more of the, they were scared because they'd known me 18 months previous to that.
Yeah.
As she's pretty good.
Yeah.
She's 3 in the world. You know, she's a medalist. When I came back, they didn't know what to expect. So like, is she still good? Is she a bit rubbish? Like, what's happening? And I think maybe that I just psyched them out. But because it was so successful, me coming back, I was like, yeah, I can do this. And it kind of gave me a bit of a mental boost.
And how did you kind of navigate that young mum going through that bit and now competing again at that level?
It was hard. Physically, it was hard because I'd gained like 2 stone when I had Jackson. And I found it really, really difficult to lose it.
And get back into that training mode, right?
Yeah.
Because your body's gone through so much change.
I needed to be so fit to come back, and I really wasn't. I actually couldn't fit into any of my clothes. Like nothing fit. It was just not a good time. And I said to my gym guy at the time, I was like, I need to shift this weight. But so that was actually the hardest thing because I hadn't forgotten how to play tennis. I knew how to play tennis. So my tennis skills were pretty good, probably up there with the best. But because I was so physically not fit, I couldn't compete with the girls who were fit. So that was my downfall.
And when you get one of those games that, you know, that you start getting tires and it starts going from juice. And so that then comes into the stamina level, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That was the bit I found really, really difficult. I mean, I did pretty well, like to keep up with the girls. I think literally because I played tennis so well, that's kind of what balanced out my fitness levels. And it actually wasn't until like the week before Tokyo that I actually was back to my pre-baby weight. So it took me a long, long time. And it was right down to the wire because Tokyo was my last ever tournament. So yeah.
How did you kind of like, in terms of your mental health, right? Having gone through such a kind of, almost kind of, it's like being at a peak and then something as major as that injury happens, then going into motherhood, then navigating, I mean, it's kind of being at the top of a game, really, the level that you were playing at. How did you navigate your mental health with that? Like, what's expected of you? What all these things that you're meant to be at this level, but at the same time, you're also a young mom. You've gone through kind of a period of being out of the game. How did you manage that?
It was hard. Yeah.
Is there anything that you think that you've done like to kind of help you through it, or do you think that you developed some kind of resilience throughout the time that you had played?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of both, to be honest. Like, I was lucky enough that I could work alongside a sports psych who also became a friend. And a bit of a counselor, and so we would talk about sport and everything, but then I would just rant. Like, if I needed to rant about something random, then I would. And I had that relationship with both of the sports psychs that I worked with. I was very, very lucky. I think mental health wise, I probably struggled with it my whole life, to be honest, because when you grow up disabled in the 90s and the early noughties, and you go through school and you've got no friends, and you can't go out like with my friends as you normally would be able to. I was in and out of hospital a lot when I was young. And even, when you're a young girl and it's like, start wearing skirts, and I've got scars all over my legs. Like, now I don't care. But back then it was like a real self-esteem thing. And I
think it was also probably like there's been a lot of change in our society culturally, women, gender, all sorts of, how it was in the 90s. It wasn't as welcoming for, if you had a disability, or, perhaps you come from even if you come from a different area, like school was quite harsh. Was it like that for you?
It was. I mean, both my schools were really lovely.
Yeah.
Like, they were really lovely schools. It was just unfortunate that the kids that I were with were not. But I never have not praised the school, because I actually really enjoyed being at the schools I was at. I just didn't have a very good time there. But I think, in sport, it's like everything is heightened because you're in the media as well. So if you have a bad day or something bad is going on, it's also in the media. It's not like you can just deal with it by yourself, or no one has to know. It's all over the headlines the next day. Like, Whiley has horrendous performance at US Open.
Did you read everything?
Yeah, I did. And I was lucky enough, like, not to have a lot of, hardly any bad press, to be honest, at all. So I was very, very lucky, but I was also very conscious that if I did something out of line, it could end up on Twitter, or it could end up somewhere else. You don't know where it's going to be. And it was a real roller coaster, because when I came out of school, obviously that was gone, and that was past. But in 2012, I really struggled with my mental health. I got into a really bad relationship. I suffered with depression. That was really, really difficult to get out. And then as your career grows, the stress and the pressure grows with that. And then becoming a mum and trying to juggle motherhood and traveling and the pressures that come with trying to get a medal it was extreme, but I thought I handled it pretty well.
It sounds like you definitely have handled it very well. So in terms of you going from, even when I say that out loud, right, all those accolades, and then I say now a superstar property investor and mortgage broker, how does that happen?
Again, by accident. I think the best things happen by accident, right? Like penicillin. So it was actually like, I was always interested in property. The only thing I was ever good at, apart from tennis, was finance. So when I had Jackson, and that was the only time I was ever like need to think about the end of my career, because before then, like I said to you, I was just like living in the moment.
Yeah.
And at the time, I think I was probably about 26, 27. And I was like, I have no qualifications. I have a young boy who's going to start school in a couple of years. How am I going to travel the world? What am I going to do with my life? I'm going to be retired at 30. Like, I have to do something. So I was like scouring the internet, like, what can I do that doesn't require a university degree? And I came across CMAP, which is for mortgage brokers. So I did that alongside competing. Took me a year, qualified, and then COVID hit literally a week after I qualified. No one would hire me. No one would even give me unpaid internship. I was like, you don't even have to pay me. I just want to like intern and just learn the ropes. Nothing was happening. So I jumped on a Zoom call for property investors, thought I'd, get my foot in the door. And that's when I saw Ajay, who's now my business partner, and gave him a call. Literally was like, so I'm qualified, but no one will hire me and I really need a mortgage. Can you help? And then it kind of spiraled from there, and I ended up interning, and then he offered me the job, and now I've been there 2.5 years. And
now you're business partners.
Now we're business partners, yeah.
And now you're fully out of kind of competing at competition level. How has that change been for you? Do you kind of feel like this is the progression that you want? Or, would you like to get back into tennis at some point?
I feel like it was very much needed for me to get out, because I was done. I was done with tennis. I'd achieved what I wanted to achieve. I'd stopped enjoying it. And I think when you stop enjoying something, it's hard for people to understand, because they're like, but you're so good. You're at the top of your game. You're just so good. I'm like, yeah, but I don't love it. So what's the point?
Like your dad, and how did everybody take that? Because, when you build something up like that, it's like years, and there's so many things that have been achieved. So in the people around you, their mind, they've got you as that person, right? And not as somebody who's a property investor. It's like, it's a different thing completely. How did people, especially your kind of loved ones, how did they take that news?
They kind of see it as a demotion, isn't it? Like you're this star and now you're just a broker, or you're just an investor. But my parents were fine about it. They knew what I wanted to do. They knew that it wasn't feasible either with Jackson. They knew my plans, but they were a bit hesitant. Like, you've done this all your life. You're going to be retired. Like, what are you going to do? Kind of thing. But yeah, it just felt right. And I really enjoy property. I've found like a new lease of life. Like I'm really, really passionate about what I do. Like I get up every day and I love going into the office. I love talking to clients.
Every time I talk to you about property,
I love
your
it.
Eyes light up.
Yeah, I really enjoy it.
It's like you're talking about when you talk about tennis. You are, as in, like, you've got that kind of, when you were telling me when I first met you how much you love this space, and almost like when I found out what you'd done before, a lot of people, you're kind of working up to this peak, right? Like, and you'll get there at some point, you're kind of working up. Whereas with you, because like obviously doing all this stuff at a younger age, it's like, well, anything that you do feels like it's not like Olympic level, playing in
it just
London.
Felt like I wanted that normal life, because I missed out on all the normal stuff. Whether it be like going to coffee mornings or just wearing jeans, because I was always in trackies and like I could never do my hair, I could never do my makeup, like just simple things that people probably take for granted. But I was like, I just want a normal life. Like I just want to do normal things. I don't want to have to worry about drugs testing, what I take, like what paracetamol I can take and what I can't take, what supplements I can and can't take. I don't want to have to worry about, being in a certain position for drugs testing, because it was an hour a day of my life I had to give, where I had to be in a certain...
Every single day?
Every single day. And if I wasn't there, it was a strike off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was just insane. I don't have to answer to anybody because, my team's not on the phone to be like, why aren't you at training? All of this. And so it was a real relief when I left, and I just felt like really, really free. And so I don't miss it. I don't miss it at all. And I don't have any plans to go back to it. I mean, if everything in my life was ruined, I would probably go back, because it's the only thing, my fallback. I know how to play tennis, but I have no plans to go back at all.
And so what's next for Jordanne?
Just trying to grow my businesses, just buy more property, just do more in business, in the property space.
And do you find that a lot of, when they sometimes talk about that sports personality and how it builds character, do you kind of, there's always that kind of parallel of entrepreneurship, business space. Sometimes when I was in my last job, and we'd have like a big corporate event and we'd have some big sports personality come and talk about something, because there's a lot to be learned from that kind of sports psychology. Do you feel like you're able to take a lot of what you've learned there, even though it's not a direct, it's nothing to do with it?
No,
but that mindset work.
There's a lot of transferable skills from sport to business, 100%. And I think I was really lucky to find someone like Ajay to have as my business partner, because we're so chalk and cheese. He's really direct. He's very, very business minded, and I'm fluffy. So we even out each other. So if I need to be direct and I need something done, I know I can get him to help. But if he needs a little bit of fluff, he knows to come to me. So I was really lucky also to be in a position where, I'm still self-employed and I can still have my own businesses and I can still grow with myself, but also, with Ajay as well. And I found a friend as well. Like, he's become one of my best friends and my business partner, which is quite rare, I think, in business.
And so when you have clients and they're asking you, what did you kind of do before?
Yeah.
What do you say?
On my bio, on my email, it says Jordanne Whiley MBE. So everyone's like, how did you get an MBE in financial services? And I was like, well, it's not for mortgages.
How long have you got?
I was like, well, I am the best mortgage advisor. That's why I have an MBE. But yeah, usually they Google me or something because they're intrigued, and then it sparks conversation.
Do you kind of like play it down, or do you?
I do really play it down. Only because, one, I don't want to brag, but also it's such a big story. Like, there's so much to tell that I don't have the time to be on the phone for like 3 hours explaining my whole career.
Just send them a little Wikipedia link or something.
Yeah, just here's a link. Have a read.
That's amazing. So that, honestly, Jordanne, that was such a kind of like insightful and just super unique, like that journey that you've had. But there's so many relatable points in there where you can take something away. And I think one of the biggest things is that mindset piece, right? Because like you said, dealing with being young and dealing with a disability, right? So there's that first thing that you're kind of dealing with, and how others in your peers are kind of perhaps, not being the nicest at that point. And then how kind of singular it gets in your mindset of, this is what I want to do, but it means I've got to leave this kind of lifestyle apart. And then you reach that peak and something major happens, and how you then deal with that. I think that is a huge testament to who you are today, but also a big learn for me to take away personally as well, because you just go through such a kind of, life has its ebbs and flows. And, what doesn't kind of break you definitely makes you stronger, and I can see it definitely has for you. So we have a closing tradition on this podcast, and it's giving the gift of hindsight or experience. What would you say to your younger self if you could talk to her right now? What would you say to her?
Oh, so many things.
This one's so interesting.
The first thing I would say is stop being so lazy.
Really?
Yeah.
You lazy?
Yeah, because I was really, really successful. You've seen what I've done. But that was me being lazy. And I think if I would have tried harder and given more when I was younger, sort of 17, 18, 19, I think the list would have doubled. And it's hard to understand that because the list is so long. But that would 100% be what I would say. And then I would also say, just to maybe be a bit more real. I think I was a bit of a people pleaser. I wasn't as direct as I probably should have been. So I probably would have given her a big shake and just said, look, man up, be more direct, and stop being lazy.
Okay, well, I don't know how you were lazy. I'm literally going, don't be so lazy, but you probably have got points where you're going, if I would have pushed that just a bit more.
But talented people, they can get away with being lazy. And that was my problem. I was so talented. I know that. But I was lazy because I knew that I could be, because I was still going to win. I was still going to be one of the best because I was riding on talent. Imagine if I had talent and a good work ethic, I could have been the best of all time.
And kind of now going forward, when you say that, be a bit more direct, do you think that's something that you are definitely more so now?
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. Like just speak up a little bit more. Like, this is what I want. This is how I feel. Like in sport, especially, you know, everyone's telling you to do so many things, but I never actually stopped and was like, actually, I don't want to do that. This is making me feel bad. You are making me feel bad. Like, or I'm really struggling with the loss of Rio. I need some, like, oh, I wasn't that direct.
They were able to put that into words.
Yeah. And I wish I would have done more of that in my personal life and in sport. But that's something definitely I'm going to be doing.
Now.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Jordanne. That was just so insightful and interesting and super unique. I don't think I've heard a story like it. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.